Every year, dozens of people, hikers, hunters, backpackers, will go off into the wilds of North America and then come out again claiming to have seen Bigfoot, the 8 to 10 feet tall, intelligent, bipedal, hairy creature that kind of is a cross between man and beast. And there's literally been thousands of sightings of that particular creature all over North America. And despite the thousands of sightings, there's never been a substantiated claim, so Bigfoot has become an urban legend. But no matter how you feel about Bigfoot, whether it exists or it doesn't, if you read through some of the first-hand accounts of these people who claim to have seen Bigfoot in North America, some of them are horrifying. And one account that stands out to me as being the most terrifying comes out of Oregon. There's a couple hot spots all over North America where some of the most sightings of Bigfoot occur, and one of them is in Oregon. In particular, it's the northwestern section of Oregon. And that's where today's story is going to come out of, and it is Jeff Boiler's story. Jeff was a Marine. He was then a police officer, then he became a deputy sheriff, and then he ultimately became a lawyer. What really stands out to me about Jeff's story is that he strikes me as a credible, skeptical guy who, when interviewed, because he's been on a TV show called Paranormal Witness on the Sci-Fi Channel, he did a follow-on interview. You can Google him, Jeff Boiler's Bigfoot sighting. The way he tells the story, it's like he's not trying to dress it up. He's not trying to make it more dramatic than it really was. It's like he's just telling you what happened to him. And he's not trying to create a theory as to what it was, but rather just, here it is. Here's what happened, as I remember it. And it allows you to listen to this story and really relate to it. And it makes it that much more eerie as you listen to what happened to him. And so today I'm going to be telling Jeff's story. But before I get into that, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious, delivered in story format with lots of distracting hand gestures, then you have come to the right place, because that is all I do, and I upload 3 to 4 times a week. So if that's something you'd be into, I would ask you to please gently disembowel the like button, and then subscribe to my channel and turn on all post notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into the story. Back in 1997, Jeff Boiler was a fit, single guy that had been in the Marine Corps for a little while, and then he'd been a police officer, and now he was looking to do something new with his life, and he had always been a huge fan of nature. He loved hiking and hunting, and so he just kind of up and decided to move to Oregon to just be back in nature. And so he goes out to Oregon. He doesn't really know what he's going to do for a job. One of Jeff's friends, who is the elected sheriff of a very rural county in northwestern Oregon, reached out to Jeff and said, hey, with your background, you were in the Marine Corps, you were a police officer, would you want to be one of our deputy sheriffs out here in northwestern Oregon? And Jeff's like, wow, great, and took the job. So after being on the job for a couple of months, Jeff is really happy. He loves his job, and he gets off one day from work pretty early, and he steps outside, and he would recall that it was like one of the most beautiful days he had seen in recent memory. It was just this gorgeous day, and even though initially he was planning to just go home, he was like, you know what? I'm gonna go on a hike. He wanted to go to this fairly hard to access section of the woods that was a little ways up the mountain where 20 years earlier he had actually buried one of his very close friends. And so he thought, you know what, today I'm gonna make that trip up to his grave, I'm gonna pay my respects. That's a good way to spend such a beautiful day. So he hopped in his Jeep and he started driving over to the woods that would take him up to this gravesite. It was an unmarked trail, but he had a map, he knew where it was, so he headed over. Now, Jeff was highly competent in the wilderness, but it needs to be said that he was basically going to be hiking into a section of the Cascade Mountains that was unmarked. This is a very isolated, unmarked area. And in fact, Jeff would even say that sometimes when you would walk around this section of the Cascade Mountains, you would wonder to yourself, has anyone ever been here before? Like, this is such a wild and open expanse. Am I the first person to ever step foot here? It's a section of Oregon that is totally just wild. So Jeff arrives at the dirt lot that's right on the edge of this forest that goes up the side of this mountain. And before he steps in and starts making his way up, he gets his map out and he kind of roughly charts a course, because again, there's no trail in here. He puts his map away and he begins walking up this mountain. He's been walking for about 2 hours and the terrain's really bad. And he decides, you know what, why don't I deviate from the course that I was on and try to get to a more open area that might be able to kind of bank around to get up to the gravesite. He looked on the map and he could see that parallel to where he was going up this mountain, there seemed to be a strip of clearing where it might be easier going. It would require a bit of work to get over to it, but once he was there, he believed he could get up to the gravesite. So before he makes that movement over to the clearing, there was a stream running right next to him, freshwater stream, and so he just bends down, he splashes some water on his face, he gets a drink, and before he actually starts moving towards this clearing, because now he's deviating from the path that he intended to take. And this is an unmarked trail. So he knew that he would need to be really certain where he was going. He didn't have a GPS, this is 1997. He just had his map and compass. So he pulls out his map one more time, he looks at where he needs to go, he closes it up. And so he pulls out his compass and he takes what's called an azimuth, which basically is a way to make sure you're going in the right direction. And so he pulls the compass up to his eye, and as he's looking, he sees just to the right of his viewpoint, about 20 feet above him, there is a tree and a boulder, and behind that tree, someone is watching him. And so he lowers his compass and he just kind of glances over, and he can tell that it's clearly a figure. It's got 2 eyes in its head and it's looking at him. And he's not immediately scared. He thinks that this is a person who's kind of poking their head around a tree at him. And it's daylight. He knows he's out in the middle of nowhere, but he's looking up at it, and he involuntarily cocks his head, like, huh? And this thing cocks its head. It's mimicking me. It steps out from behind the tree, and it's this huge, human-looking figure that looks very hairy. It's like 8 foot tall. And Jeff's looking up at it like, that's not a human. And so, not really sure what it is, he instinctively reaches for a sidearm, but he can't get it out of its holster. And he's like fumbling with it, and he's keeping his eyes on this thing that's, maybe 50 feet away from him, 20 feet up on this rocky outcropping. He can't get it out. And the figure's just looking down at him, and it's still got its head cocked to the side. He finally looks down to free his pistol. He draws the pistol, but the creature's gone. And he's like, I gotta get a better look. There was a tree that was pretty high that had a bunch of low branches that he could climb up. That would, if he climbed up maybe 15 or 20 feet, he could probably look over into this rocky outcropping. So he starts climbing up this tree, and he looks, and he's now level with that rocky outcropping, and he's looking out, and it stretches off quite a ways. There's a whole stretch of forest right there. And he's looking, and he can't see or hear anything. And he's starting to wonder to himself, like, did I really just see that? Is my mind playing tricks on me? Am I hallucinating? And so he decides, you know what? I'm going to climb back down, and I'm going to go up onto that rocky outcropping. Wasn't planning to, but now I'm going to, and I want to see if I can see some tracks or just see where this thing went. He's a Marine. He was a police officer. He was very comfortable in the wild. He just didn't really scare that easily. And so he's just kind of curious. And he's armed, And so he climbs down the tree and he starts climbing up this like little rocky outcropping, and he gets up to where this creature was hiding. There's nothing there. There's no scent, there's no anything. And he just decides, you know what? I'm just gonna walk in the general direction that I think this thing went. Because where he was, which was this rocky outcropping, it kind of dead-ended because it's like a cliff. So he could pretty much only go inland and up this mountain. And so he just starts walking. And as he's walking, he's looking for signs that he could potentially attribute to this creature. He's listening really intently, but there's nothing. After about an hour, he's looking at the map and he's looking around at the terrain, and he's like, I think I'm lost. Like, I need to turn around now. And then it dawns on him that he's also lost track of time. It's starting to get pretty dark out, and he does not have a flashlight. So he starts to panic a little bit because he realizes that his curiosity has now put him in a very dangerous situation. He doesn't have supplies to stay the night. He doesn't have a flashlight. It's getting late, and he's potentially lost. So he tries to compose himself, and he just says, okay, I'm just gonna turn around and walk back, because he hasn't seen any indication of this creature or this person or whatever it is. So he turns around and he starts backtracking as best as he can. And as soon as he starts moving back, from behind him, he hears what sounds like a very large tree break and smash into the ground. And he described it as being louder than most guns. Like, it's an extremely loud sound. And he turns around and he looks, and there's nothing there. But he just figured, that's crazy. Like, I'm lucky that no tree landed on me. He's not thinking that could be, Bigfoot. He's thinking that a tree just fell and I'm lucky it didn't land on me. And so now, even though he is not connecting the falling tree with this creature or person he saw, he's in a bit of a panicked state. And so he can't help but associate the experiences. And so he finds himself, as he's walking now a little bit faster and faster away from where he just was, looking over his shoulder in the direction of where that tree fell and where he believed this creature or person was. And as he's walking, looking ahead where he needs to go, but then peering over his head, over his shoulder, over and over again, he hears another loud snap and fall, and it stops him dead in his tracks. It was ahead of him, off to the right, basically on the exact opposite side of where he had come from. And he's thinking to himself, in all the time that I've spent in the woods, it's so rare to be around a tree suddenly falling, unless it's being caused by another tree falling or some other event. It's rare that you would hear two large trees break and fall independent from one another in the same small area but not connected. That's pretty rare. And he's thinking to himself, if that creature or person had anything to do with it, how did it go from over there to all the way over there without me hearing it? It's moving around without me being able to spot it. And so the hair on the back of his neck stands up, and he's starting to feel very uncomfortable. He's being hunted. And so he keeps on walking the path, but begins to veer off away from the second snap that he heard. He figures, I'm just gonna split the difference and kind of go a little bit to the left and avoid that falling tree, still keep my distance from this falling tree, and just get down the mountain as quickly as I can. And so as he starts moving in this kind of slightly new direction, he hears a third falling tree. And now it's back on his left side, closer to that first one he heard, except it's closer to him now. He turned around and he couldn't see the result of a large tree falling. He certainly heard it, but he's looking and he can't see anything. And he's thinking to himself, like, 3 falling trees, that is not innocent. Something is knocking over these trees. And I think it's that creature I saw. And even worse, as he's thinking to himself, is this creature using these trees to signal to other creatures where he is? Is he being tracked? It's getting closer to him without giving away its own position. He really believed he was being hunted. And so he starts sprinting down the mountain. And as he's running, he's hearing snap, fall, snap, fall. These massive trees are being knocked down on his left and his right side, like you have 2 hunters basically following him, or it's the same one that apparently can move around in the wilderness without being spotted. And he is absolutely terrified. He's running down the mountain, he's falling, he's getting smashed up every time he falls. And he finally, after about 30 minutes of just running straight downhill with these crashes getting closer and closer and closer to him, he reaches this clearing. And he stops abruptly because there's an animal in the middle of the clearing, and it's a deer. And the deer doesn't seem fazed by Jeff. The deer sees Jeff, looks behind Jeff, just off to his side, and it tilts its head back and then turns and sprints away. It wasn't running from Jeff. It was running from whatever was right behind Jeff. And Jeff stops, and he starts turning his head in the direction of where the deer was looking, and he can't see anything. And as he's looking, another tree slams, smashing down right behind where he was. He takes off sprinting. He knows he's maybe a half mile from his car at this point. And now, as he's sprinting through this field, all he hears is just a cascade of these crashing trees as he sprints the final stretch to his car. He pulls out his key and he starts clicking the automatic locks, and he can't tell if it's working. And he's panicking that it's not going to work in time, and he's going to get to his car and it's going to be locked. And he's fumbling with his keys to open the door, and now the crashing has all stopped. And he's just waiting for this thing to jump out and grab him. He manages to open his car, jumps inside, slams it, starts it up, and peels out of there. And then he went back to his office where his sheriff was, and he told him what happened, and he felt ridiculous telling him. And his sheriff was like, I get reports like this all the time. This side of the Cascade Mountains, in that very remote section that you were in, we get reports like that all the time. I believe you. If you want to file a report, go for it, but chances are good it's never going to be followed up with. This is just a phenomenon of being out here in the wilderness. Some people believe it, some people don't. Decades would go by and he would finally share his story, which is why we're hearing about it now. But when he tells that story, if you watch it on Paranormal Witness, you're listening to it like it happened yesterday. This has stuck with this man, and it's clear it had a profound impact on his life. So while there's never been any substantiated claims of Bigfoot actually existing, some of these reports are eerily similar to one another, and some of the people detailing these sightings are people like Jeff, who really has no reason to lie or embellish. He doesn't really stand to gain much. In fact, he stands to lose, because he could be labeled as kind of like a kook for believing that Bigfoot chased him. So the way I like to look at stuff like this is just to keep an open mind. We don't know half the stuff that's in our ocean. You know, we barely know anything in the universe. What's to say that there isn't some creature like Bigfoot that's managed to evade, legitimate proof that it exists? I think it's certainly possible. It doesn't mean that I fundamentally believe it's true. It just means that I retain an open mind. But I want to know what you think chased Jeff through the woods. Was it Bigfoot? Was it something else? Or was this just some hoax? And if it was a hoax, are all the other sightings hoaxes too? And if you haven't already, if you enjoyed this story, if you would, please gently disembowel the like button and then subscribe to my channel and turn on all post notifications so you don't miss my 3 to 4 weekly uploads of stories that are like this, strange, dark, and mysterious. So thank you all very much for tuning in. I look forward to reading your comments. If you want to get in touch with me, you can message me on Instagram. My handle is johnballin416, or you can check me out on TikTok, where I'm quite active. My handle is Mr. Ballin, and I go live on TikTok at 10 p.m. Eastern, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I hope to see you there, or on Instagram, or right here on YouTube. Thank you all for checking out my channel and for watching my video and for sticking it out till the very end. Until next time, see ya.